Welcome back to another episode of the Frustrated CEO podcast. My name is Patrick Lyons. I'm one of your co-hosts here with my friends, colleagues, and cohorts, Patsy Feeman and Leb Tannenbaum. Hello to you both.
Hello.
Hello, glad to be here.
Well, me too. You're really going to like our guest today. We're actually, we're bringing back a prior guest, someone who helped us unpack and understand organization resilience. This time we're going to dig a little bit deeper with that same guest, who I like to think of as a resilience superhero, someone noted author, speaker, organizational organization resilience expert, and author of a new book, The Resilience Plan, which we will talk about more as we go along. But we're bringing back Dr. Marie-Hélène Pelletier, MH. Welcome back for another
thank you.
podcast. Good to see you again.
Same. Great to see all of you.
So now, last time you were here, we talked more about organization resilience, right? Trying to equip our CEO listeners, our senior leaders, with how to not only build their own resilience, but also their leadership team, but also look at their whole organization. This episode, we appreciate you coming back. We want to dial really in to the CEO, because as we touched on this when we had you on last time, CEO is the biggest input into every organization culture. So CEO's resilience is just as important as everything else. So here, nice, easy question to get started. What is the biggest, from your perspective, what's the biggest misconception that CEOs have about their own resilience?
They think they don't need to think about it. They don't need to talk about it, don't need to think about it, don't need to do anything about it, because they think they are inherently resilient. That's who they are. That's their personality trait. They are the rock, and they're good to go. So therefore, why talk about it? That's the misconception, because no, it's not a personality trait.
I was going to say, so I'm guessing from if that's the biggest misconception, then you're going to say, no, they really do need to worry about it. Yeah.
They need to think about it, and they need to think about it proactively. And so, because resilience is not a personality trait. It is influenced by some personality traits, like optimism, for example. But really, it's a state. So it's something that, therefore, at times in our lives will be higher, at times will be a bit lower, and we can influence it. And our CEOs, like most humans, but definitely as CEOs, love to influence, control, have power over things. And yes, you probably have had great moments of high resilience. You will need even higher moments of resilience in the future. And the more you're proactive, the better.
Do you encounter CEOs who think it's a sign of weakness to admit that they aren't resilient, or they struggle at being resilient?
Oh, they would hate to do that. And here's the thing. You're so right. Yes. I mean, sign of weakness, or just hate it profoundly. And here's the thing. But here's the beauty here. We need to shift that thinking from thinking that it's all one or nothing. Like, I'm the rock over here, and therefore I don't think about it, don't talk about it, and then I become a wreck here. So you're either a rock or a wreck. And that's not helpful. Because by the time you're a wreck, it's a bit of work to come back up, really. That's the burnout. That's where, it feels like we can't do anything. Really, this is a continuum. And all we're saying is we want to pay attention, right? It's similar otherwise to if you said, we're good on the financial statements. I don't need to look at them. Just let me know if there's a crisis. But if it's just, small negative going down changes, I don't need to know. I'm not paying attention. And then crisis happens. We're now bankruptcy level, and we're like, over here. We would never do this. We want to look at these numbers. If we see that they're going down, we're not panicked or thinking it's a sign of weakness. We're just saying it's normal business. Let's see what's causing this and what adjustments can we make. So same thing with our resilience. It's part of what allows us to bring our best, and we want to pay attention. And yes, it will go up and down over time. Fine. But then catch it, and especially catch it early. You will have way more opportunities to influence it.
So in the last episode, so listener, if you didn't listen to MH's previous episode, I encourage you to do so. There were a number of traits or practices you mentioned that I would love to hear more about that may go with the optimism and positive outlook. One was stepping back. One was listening to differences among people. One was keeping an eye, both externally, internally, for what's going on, and looking at all levels of the organization. Those are more, I would say, reflective or inclusive patterns or practices.
Yes. Yes. And they're all good, and they will contribute to your overall resilience, because as CEO, part of what influences, for all of us in general, part of what influences how resilient we might feel at any point in time is the levels and types and number of demands that we're facing, and the sources of supply that we have that bring us back, that brings us energy and increase our resilience, our overall mental health. And so if I'm here as CEO and I've invested in these kinds of examples, Patsy, that you brought forward, it will overall improve how things are going in my team and in my workplace, which will therefore help me also. And then as an individual here, I can also increase my personal resilience, and that will help me. And yes, one of the ways we could do this, and there are many ways, part of what I argue in the book is we don't have 5 hours a day to do this. So therefore, we need to be very selective and strategic and connected to our context to decide which ones I'm going to focus on. But one example, yes, could be paying attention to my thinking pattern. Do I tend to go straight to all or nothing thinking? This will never work. Nothing's working and it's my fault. This person's always like this. Bit of polarized type thinking that really doesn't help anything. And instead forcing myself to look at the middle, the gray area. No, they're not always like this. They tend to be like this. That's their personality. But I remember Patsy being like that at other times. I remember Patrick doing this completely different approach at other times. So, okay, I can calm down. And again, there's an element of stepping back and making sure I catch my thinking. Another example is if I'm facing very challenging situations, the sooner in my head, and that's a very easy action we can all decide to take tomorrow or today, the sooner we tell ourselves, I have no idea how to figure this out, but I will, the better. What I've now done is I've primed my brain to go in that direction. It's not magic. I still need to, do the work and do the incubation, connect with others, maybe search for solutions, all the things. However, if I enter this thinking, okay, I have no idea how to solve this right now, and I will figure it out, very different from I have no idea how to solve this right now, and this is the end of me. There's a reason you got into this job. You will likely figure it out. Might as well talk to the brain, right? So that's an example. There are others as well, but these are some along the lines of the growth mindset.
It's good.
MH, when you're talking like that and you're talking about either or, it's making me think of maybe a myth that needs to be debunked about what it is to be a CEO. Always strong, always on top of everything, knows what's coming down the pike, all of these different things. But can you talk a little bit about resiliency for a CEO or around vulnerability and transparency, letting people in?
Yes. And obviously, the research behind this. So yes, now you've said the word vulnerability. Every CEO hates that word. That's a broad generalization, but so I will disclaim it now and say, okay, probably not 100%, but a large majority do not like it. It's not that they don't agree with the concept. It's not, and they do realize they're human. They do realize bringing their humanity to some of what they do, their conversations, being seen as human is probably a good thing. Yes, it is. But the word itself, vulnerability, is often like so don't stop listening, everyone. Stay with us. We will provide other opportunities here. But it is the correct word if we were to be specific. So what I would say is, yes, you do want to bring your overall humanity, but do it in the way that's you. The problem sometimes is people hear this and they're like, oh my God, I'm like so not that person. If I even try, it's going to feel completely wrong. I don't even want to, but even if I tried, no one's going to believe me. So, okay, so let this go. But we do want to just bring a bit more of yourself as human in the context, because we want you to be resilient, but also be seen as investing in your resilience. Otherwise, as we know, your behaviors is what talks the loudest. It's not what you say, it's what you do. Yes, it's true. Mm-hmm. Modeling is the strongest way to influence. So just take it as you. If you're that type of person that, whatever, goes for a run on Sunday morning, and now you're back speaking to your team on Monday, and they say, how was your weekend? Instead of just saying, yeah, had a great run Sunday morning, you could say, had a great run Sunday morning, made sure I do that run because we've got a busy week ahead of us. Okay. It's friendly. You sound still aligned with what you can actually say, but now you're hinting at the fact that you're investing in your overall health. Now, depending on styles, some people will go much further than this. I would make sure I went for my walk because I know we've got a busy week and I want to make sure I invest in my mental health every single weekend on top of the small things I do for my mental health every day. So it will be different for different people, but we want to bring it forward.
In addition to leading by example, how else does a resilient CEO make a difference in the organization?
What's the impact of them being more resilient, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you'll bring your even much better self to everything. Some CEOs have burnt out entirely. So you understand what we are saying here. Okay. And then many CEOs have seen it from where they were. I could see how I could burn out from this. And somehow either the context changed, or you were able to change the direction of how things were going and you were able to come back up. But all of us, and if you didn't go here, where you actually see burnout from here, you've seen moments where you're at your better self and not so better self. For a lot of people, when we're not at our better self, at early signs, we'll call it, we may be more impatient. We may make more assumptions. Somehow, Led just said something. I respond to what I think I heard. And he's like, I didn't say any of this, right? Our concentration may not be as good. So we think we read something, but really it didn't sink in. Our focus is not so good. We now just sent the wrong proposal to the wrong client. Right? So point is, when our resilience is not fully there, it's not just something that we can say, well, I'm not feeling good, but I'm still delivering at the same level. At some point, it's outside of your hands. It's not just a matter of willing yourself to keep going at the same level. It will impact your performance. So if it's a little bit and you're listening, you will likely then do the things to build it back, which is great. But if it's a little bit and you're not listening, the trend is going to continue. That's where we keep sinking down. And now the mistakes are bigger. And now it's not just, more things falling through the cracks. It's bigger things falling through the cracks. It's impacting your brand. It's impacting what you've taken decades to build here. So it's not just doesn't matter, I can override it. Can't override it. It will be impacted, and therefore your performance will be impacted.
I have been around CEOs who are just honestly, authentically funny, and they know when to use it. Is that something that's kind of, I'm trying to remember, I've done so much coaching work. I don't think I ever actually spoke to a resiliency plan. So I guess I'm anxious to get to your book, but can you include humor or developing humor and storytelling in your plan for resiliency?
Well, so, I mean, the ability to, sometimes humor has to do with taking a completely different perspective, pointing to a very unusual aspect of what's going on, right? And so, I mean, not everyone's going to be funny, right? We're not necessarily all funny. And so even if you said, MH, become funny, like be that funny leader, I'm not. I can be funny a bit at times with sometimes some weird ideas, but really that's probably the most of it. And so what I would say though is, from a psychological perspective and a resilience perspective, if we bring our true self and our ability to see things from different perspectives, then number one, it's good for our brain, because everyone's brain almost like uncramps a little bit, and that's good. Mm-hmm. We can invite humor from others if it's there in other people and it supports it, then that's great. So if Patrick's funny, great. Let's bring Patrick in his funny side, whatever. So that's what I would say on the humor side of things. But it's I think the mindset of making sure we're looking at different perspectives, because sometimes, especially when we're more stressed out, resilience going down, the tendency will be to make negative interpretations. Oh, Patrick made this face because whatever. If I'm training myself and supporting my own brain to say, wait, I'm a bit stressed out these days. Everyone's face looks less funny these days, including Patrick's. And that's probably more about me being stressed out than actually any one of them meaning something not so nice. So managing my own brain will help. And so sometimes, yes, it's seeing funny sides. So sometimes it's just different perspectives. And of course, there's always the aspect of being sensitive to how humor can be what works for me, but may be perceived differently by others. So sometimes we want to be sensitive to that as well. What's funny for me may not be funny for you. So there's an element of back to knowing our landscape that you were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Let me ask you a question about, so today's episode is focused on the CEO. In addition to creating a plan, or maybe that's, clearly that is a proactive approach to resilience. It's really the question is since we're all about giving our listeners very practical things that they can do, what are some proactive things a CEO or a senior leader, somebody in the C-suite can and should be thinking about to proactively approach resilience?
Yes. So bottom line is we need to take actions, and no one has 5 hours a day. And we know the kinds of things that would likely help. We've heard them in the pandemic, and they're true. They're research-based. The exercise, the meditation, the eating better, the seeing friends, the sleeping. Yes. But then it doesn't happen. And so what we need is, yes, to do these things. And for each of us, and that's where the fact of having a strategic plan is so important, it needs to connect with my values, each of ours, so our values, our current context, and then we'll have a strategic plan that's personalized. So specifically, I'll give you a quick example. And in the book, that's what I've done. I've extracted some of the things we do from a strategy perspective in a business over here, things we would do when launching a product or a service. So I extracted these approaches, paired them with what we know from psychology makes a difference on resilience. And that's where we're going. So specifically, listing your values, what's most important for you in life, personal and professional. So clarity on this, in writing usually, because it's easier to think. Then clarity on currently and realistically all your demands, not just the negative work ones you don't want, the positive work ones, the negative and positive ones from a personal perspective. So you've really got all the demands. And then the sources of supply. of energy that come in for you. And that's a key of all of these. That's a key exercise. That's simple 2-column, my demands, my sources of supply. Because what people then realize is they've got many things on the demand side, and you cannot put a wish on the supply side. If you wish you went for a walk 5 times a week, it's not but you're not going. It's not going on the list. And that's when often people say, okay, I'm actually not doing much on the other side here. And then I also walk people through doing the equivalent of a SWOT analysis, but for your life. So internal to me, my areas that support my resilience, areas that don't, like I tend to say yes, for example, too much. In my external context, something that may help, I can actually walk out of where I live and walk, or I can't. You're looking at your overall context, and then you design a strategy that works. So with all this, it could lead to, usually say 3 pillars, but there may be a pillar number 1 that's going to be called boundary, where I'm going to protect that even more. And there may be a second pillar that's going to be called art, where I do 0 art. I'm not artistic, but it would help my brain uncramp. So I'm going to put like 15 minutes once a week to do this. And right. So then I'm finding my own pillars. They're totally doable. And I can implement this.
I'm so glad you said boundaries. It actually was the thought. It was going to be the question. I was going to ask, where do boundaries come into this? Again, boundary. I think boundaries is another one of those words where everybody knows what they mean, what that means. But in terms of how to build them, how to apply them, for me, it always helps to think of my boundaries as my rules of engagement. So in order for anybody to be in a relationship with me, including my work, like in order for my work to be in a relationship with me, I have to first be clear on my rules of engagement. And then I have to communicate those rules of engagement. So Leb, let's talk about how that went, right? That didn't work, how you spoke to me, how you treated me, how you treated things that are important to me. Like, if this is going to work, I'm sorry to have this conversation in front of other people, but Leb, we've needed to have this conversation for a really long time. So it sounds like boundaries are an important part of this process. Knowing what they are, having them, and holding them is a big part of resilience. I'm asking.
They may be, it will depend. In this example, for sometimes, often for CEOs, they've been so turned towards others that, I've worked with many who, for a period of time, they don't protect the boundaries enough, and they get to a point where they get really clear that they need to, and then they do. Right? Mm-hmm. And so there may be a moment where it's maybe part of my strategy now, because I've not done it that much so far. But once if it's implemented, like you, for example, you say, you already know it's there, it's implemented. You may not need it as part of your strategic plan. You may instead need to have a pillar on meditation, because you've been doing other things, but not that. And that would be the next thing you need to bring. So everyone, I don't know, I'm just inventing. But you see, it will depend for each of us. But it is a point that's worth asking ourselves, do I need more of those boundaries? Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking at the time, and I'm probably time to get practical. All right, begin with our key takeaways from this episode. Listener, this is the part of every episode where we want to give you very specific, actionable things you can take, actionable steps you can take, in this case, to improve your own leadership resilience, to show up better for yourself and for those you lead, and I'll say those you love. So I'm going to look at my colleagues, including UMH, who'd like to go first. 1 or 2 things, 2-3 things that a leader can do to grow in this area.
Well, one is just ridiculously simple. Have a resilience plan. Actually take the time, maybe get the book, have a plan. It's really going to help. And this is for CEOs and senior leaders. Not only think your personal values, but write them out. Like, get to know them even better. And also take a look at them as they relate to the organization's values. so you can really be your authentic self. And I just really like the idea of doing a SWOT analysis of your life as it relates to resilience. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your opportunities? So SWOT it, and it will probably help you create a plan.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thanks,
Who's
sir.
next?
So Patrick, go next, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Well, first I thought just awareness, right? Resilience allows you to bring your best self to everything. When you burn out, your not so best self appears. You can be less patient, quicker to assumptions, less focused, and it will ultimately affect your performance. And then MH, I like how you're talking about just bringing your overall humanity, but bring it in a way that's authentically you. Right? Be seen as somebody who invests in your own resilience. Don't be So it was good. Those are the quick 2 points that I thought I'd share. Patsy, you want to go?
Yes, there was a lot under pay attention. So pay attention to our thoughts, pay attention to my thoughts and beliefs, pay attention to our encouragement ourselves or not. So if we don't know something, then tell ourselves, I'll figure it out. Pay attention to, so that's more of our internal, pay attention to our external, our interactions, our reactions, and how they start to affect performance. And if you notice those, stop and then get some help. The other one is know what your sources of supply are. So for your personal resilience, that may be part of what you're talking about in your pillars, but what are my sources of supply?
Good. MH, what would you add?
Oh, I love everything you just said. Building on some of what Patsy was talking about, here's a very concrete thing to consider doing to increase your self-awareness and paying actually attention to your overall resilience so you don't go from rock to wreck. So you can actually see if you're sliding. You print a calendar off the internet, you post it somewhere you visit every night where you brush your teeth, maybe whatever. And every night before brushing your teeth, you put a number, 0 to 10 scale. 10, top resilience, 0 is nothing. And you try to not just say 0, 10, find the number. 9.5, 9, 9.5, 8.5, 7, 6. Oh, so now you're going to start seeing it. It will take you seriously 2 seconds every night. This is not long, doable, even if it's busy, but it will give you a number. And yes, it's not necessarily a valid tool, but it will be reliably the same because you're the one rating. So, it will be internally reliable. So that could be a way to increase self-awareness. So you're paying attention as opposed to not paying attention. Another quick thing, and we know this from research, Adam Grant did that piece with someone else, but it's a great piece of research where they were showing how you're going to increase trust in your teams and psychological safety if, as CEO, you share what you've received as constructive feedback that you're working on. So that's a way so it does that, which connects to that other episode we did together, but it also serves as an accountability because now you've shared it, and that may be something that you will invest in even more. So something else to consider.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Marie-Hélène Pelletier. Thank you for joining us, not for one, but for now a second episode. If someone is interested in picking up a copy of the Resilience Plan, should they go to your website? Yeah,
you can go to theresilienceplan.com. It goes to the book, to me, to everything I do, or connect on LinkedIn. Always a pleasure.
Okay, so that's the best way to get in touch with you. Thank you again for bringing your insights. I know it's been useful to us. I know it'll be useful to our listeners as well. My pleasure. Patsy, Leb, thank you both for sticking around, for not leaving midway. I don't know why you would, but I appreciate it anyway. Listener, thank you for sticking with us to another episode of the Frustrated CEO Podcast, and we will see you again next time.